morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my dear friend Olivia Parr-Rud. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Kathy. So great to be here with you.
Oh, yes, I enjoy our friendship so much. And, I just realized you haven't been on all year. Oh my gosh. You were on honestly 3 years ago.
We will remedy that.
Yes, we will. So,
I've been kind of dormant, just to let you know. So I'm now ready to really step out. So we'll be
yay.
talking more.
Yay. Well, there's so many cool things to do right now. This is a time of huge change and co-creation at a very high level. So, and I would be honored to co-create with you, Olivia. For the people that don't know Olivia, I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, but I don't want to stifle the conversation. But she has now started a thing called the Wisdom Institute, and she's a wisdom warrior. She's a global visionary, award-winning best-selling author, expert data scientist, which is when I first met you, that was a lot of your background. You were still working in technology doing data scientist. And you guys, she wrote a Wiley book. So this is not just a self-published book. This is big time here. And expert data scientist and founder of Your Wisdom Institute. So I'm not going to read the rest of the bio because it's boring. But how did you make this journey, Olivia, from where you are right now? Well, excuse me, backwards. From where you were doing contract work, doing high level database work, and and data technology to make it more usable in corporate to where you are right now. Could you talk a little bit about your journey?
Sure. It's kind of interesting how I got here. So, absolutely. So, let me just start early. As a child, I was really mystical. I was into all kinds of mystical stuff. I loved reading about, past lives and just different cosmos stories, things like that. And I also wasn't a great reader. Like I could read short stuff that would hold my interest, but I couldn't read much
Oh,
long term, big books or anything like that. And so it's kind of funny that I'm a writer, but because of that, math came easily. So I ended up studying math, and it just forced me for practical reasons. You know how we get responsible, especially who had kids. And when my husband got ill, I thought, okay, I had a math degree, and then I thought maybe I should get a master's and really set up a career for myself. And I ended up getting a master's degree. I wanted to go into spiritual psychology, and then a friend of mine said, well, it's really hard to get a job. And I thought, okay. She says, you should use your math skills. So I ended up getting a master's in statistics. And then I was recruited into the credit card industry at a really good time for data science. It wasn't called that back then, but I was good at it, but it never fed my soul. And at the same time, I saw needs for more human skills. A lot of people that work in technology are very left brain, and I was not. So it was kind of hard, and it actually my interpersonal skills allowed me to really excel. And that's what I wrote about. First, I wrote a very technical book for Wiley, and then I wrote a book for Wiley on the emotional skills needed for business success, and then kind of went off on my own. So a couple years ago, I really decided to retire because things were changing in the industry. But at the same time, I had this guidance to look at people who have had long lives. Perhaps I now think there's a lot of really wise young people. But at that time, I thought about myself and how our society, our culture sometimes thinks, okay, when you reach a certain age, then you don't have value anymore. And I looked at myself and a lot of my friends, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of wisdom here. How could I facilitate getting their wisdom? I initially to the corporate world, but really for anyone. So I got a really clear message in a meditation in like 2005 or 6 that my purpose in life was to bring love into the corporate world. And my tagline is love, make it your business, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I feel like I have great corporate, well, friends that have really great corporate models that I want to get in front of the corporate community. And at the same time, there's just so much other wisdom. And at this really important time in our evolution as a planet, I think there will be real yearning for wisdom and for people who are waking up to actually step into who they are finally and say, this is my wisdom. I want to share it. And then as we work together, we can just create this beautiful world that we all visualize.
I love it. I love the name and I love the feeling of it because it isn't, it doesn't have, it's a soft presentation. It's not the high authority. I mean, the paradigm that we grew up in is well, respect your elders and do as you're told. And I hated it when my father said, I'd say why, and he'd say because I said so.
Yeah.
I hated that. But there was a lot of that authority in a negative way. And what you're doing is you're bringing in the knowledge and the wisdom of almost the crones. I don't know what you call a man crone, but the crones that we have a holistic worldview because of our experience. And we can help guide from that view of how to create community, how to get along, how to be happy. I mean, the society and the way that the media in its movies and books and everything, there's so much that is about conflict, not about cooperation.
Yeah, it's I think it's a bit of brainwashing.
Yes,
And I think that is going to end
me too.
because well, and you spoke to that kind of hierarchical structure, and in business, what was so exciting was that I felt this need, not need, but like yearning to bring more interpersonal skills into business. So
Right.
think about, I was a statistician. My manager didn't understand what I did. I would just hand them an equation and say, this is what you want to use to market,
Yeah.
find your audience. And they had to trust me, right? And
Right.
so I had to be able to communicate, build rapport, make sure that they could trust me. And of course, they would test into things as well. But what I noticed, and a lot of failures in the corporate world, are because of poor communication.
Exactly.
And what I realized is that the whole paradigm had shifted, that the world, there's a great book by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat. And when I read that, I realized because everything's changing so quickly, the old, very hierarchical model just doesn't work anymore, because by the time a new idea comes in and goes all the way up to chain to the CEO to make a decision and back down, the market or threat is lost. It's just too late.
Right.
And so it was really exciting that I could prove a fiscal reason to actually create more harmony among people, because everybody has to have more autonomy. They have to be able to communicate, build trust. And I do think the younger people today want that. I hear from younger people that they don't want to just work for a paycheck and not be seen. They want to be seen for who they are, not just what they do. And they want meaning in their work. And that's exciting, because that's going to force companies to build cultures of healing and communication and really love. And that then spills over into the family and the community and the world at large. And a lot of corporations are bigger than most nation states, and not a lot, but a few that control a lot, right?
Yeah.
And if we can change the culture, I feel like it's a huge shift for mankind, womankind.
Well, I think technology leads the charge anyway, because at least even in my experience, I was with Arthur Anderson, everything was team. And once you have team, and if the team leader is a servant leader, and does understand that everyone wants to be loved and wants to be appreciated, and everyone has huge gifts, and they wouldn't even be in your team if they weren't. So that whole fear tactics of getting high performance, that whole model, it's got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to go. And I'm not sure, because I've been out of it for so long. I'm not sure how it's being used right now, but I know that Google and Apple and some of the large tech companies. I know Oracle was doing it. Sun Microsystem, that's not here anymore, but they were all using small teams, like little circles, and
Yeah.
lead was in the circle, not in the middle of the circle. It wasn't as hierarchical. What do you think about that model as far as sharing wisdom?
Well, it's works much better, and I think Arthur Andersen was probably early on there where they figured that out. What I noticed is that companies that are in tech and probably in management are more open to it. It's the older kind of banking, insurance, that's where they're struggling. And a lot of it means because let's say you come in and you convince the leaders that they'll do better if they create these small autonomous teams, then they have to give up control. And that's really where the
Yeah,
problem is. But it does work so much better. And really, Deming proved this back in Japan, back after World War II, when they started building cars using these small teams where people could make decisions and improve without upper authority. And well, they kind of whipped our ass for car performance for many decades after that, right?
right.
And so absolutely it works much, much better. And I see that now happening. I feel like our culture, our country, the United States, is being pushed. There's a thing out there called devolution where we're being encouraged, let's say, to take on more power at the local level, which is really how the country works best anyway. And so I'm excited to get involved in local teams to really shape policy. And I feel like we can most people on our, at a citizen level just want peace and love and an opportunity to be creative and make a living and live in joy.
Right.
And so now I feel like by having these small teams, we can make that happen. So
Right.
that's exciting.
Well, on an energetic level, the energy of being in a team that's working together. I ran a project down in Denver with a water feature company, and the first year they had done this water feature company, they did 150,000, and then they hired me to come in my group and to do a marketing plan and change what they were doing, and we did $1 million. And I was the only woman. It was all guys, and because it was like a game. Okay, you do this, I'll do that, da, da, da. And you could feel the energy just building, and because it was fun, and that's what a lot of businesses don't realize, that once that authoritative fear of having the report done on time for the authority figure,
Yeah.
that squashes creativity, it squashes all that energy.
Mhm.
And we're at a time now where everything could be brand new. I mean, nothing's going back to normal. That normal, it wasn't fair for everyone anyway. It wasn't a good.
No, it wasn't. And I think the future it will be. And beyond even like corporate teams, there's a way to have teams in a town where you can have healers and visionaries and people with trades that just all cooperate together to make policy and really show up in service to. There's that thing in quantum physics that the total's greater than the sum of the parts, right? It speaks to that energy that's created when a team is formed where two or more are gathered, or however you want to look at it, is that there's this, some call, I think Patricia Albert calls it the we space, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
holacracy, the business model, is actually built with that concept that everybody shows up in service to that collective energy that we're birthing and creating. And then that's where it really gets to be fun.
yes, yes. And I think it's, this is a show for conscious business leaders who, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are servant leaders, and servant leaders, they pay a lot of attention to their customers, but they also pay a tremendous amount of attention to their employees. And so
Mm-hmm.
the model of using the team model slash the Wisdom Institute model, where it's really honoring everyone's gifts,
Yeah.
because there's no one that's hired because they're a bad fit. They have to be nurtured and encouraged to
Mm-hmm.
to blossom in their job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we are all born, so this is my worldviews, we're all born with something to give.
Right,
And in the past, I don't know that that's been nurtured in us.
right.
So I feel like that's going to be the future, is to help people find, even older people, what did you yearn to do as a kid? What did you enjoy? What are you doing when you lose track of time? There's so many ways to kind of tap into that if people don't know what it is. And then they can give a gift to their community with their wisdom or whatever, their talents, their experience. It can just be, and it's fun. It's like most people end up not even caring about money. They just want to give. So it's really a beautiful model.
Well, that the model that you're so who is a wisdom, who is the perfect person for your Wisdom Institute? Do you have a
Like an avatar, right? Yeah, I think it's people like us that perhaps are older. I see, my definition of wisdom is you're born with gifts and talents, and then through your life you gain knowledge and experience, and then you tie in your intuition and your passion, and that forms your wisdom. So I feel like there's a lot of us who have worked in the corporate world perhaps and retired, but have so much to share, if it's a technical skill, if it's a leadership skill, any of these things. And I would love to get them in front of corporate buyers, stakeholders, to perhaps get their work back into a corporate setting as a consultant or something. And then at some point, perhaps as an outreach, I'd love to tap the wisdom of other perhaps marginalized communities, like people that have been incarcerated or homeless people, because I feel like they've figured some things out that could be some real jewels of wisdom for the rest of us. I see people where I live that are homeless, and I think, gosh, I don't know if I'd survive. I want to know how they do this. And I feel like that could also shine light on some things that might be made better by awareness. So that will be sort of an outreach. But really, my avatar is anyone, male, female, that is yearning to share wisdom and just doesn't have a way to maybe even package it. We can help with that, or just really get it out to the world, business or personal.
That's perfect. Well, I know in the past, when you think about what our parents might have done, our mothers were doing volunteer work. There were a lot of nonprofits that they were very active with, and that seemed to be the way to give back as you grew older. And it doesn't seem like that's the same energy that's happening now. There with the capacity to share online courses and Zoom and these kind of live opportunities,
Mhm.
everybody on YouTube, everywhere, can share their knowledge and be the grandmother you didn't have, or the
Yeah.
older mother that you didn't have. I mean,
Mm.
I know that when something breaks in my house, I go straight to YouTube. To
Right.
repair it. So because I don't have an older parent to ask, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yep.
So it's kind of that knowledge. I also want to bring up the indigenous.
Yeah.
The indigenous honored the elders, and they still do. And I kind of see us going full circle back to a lot of the indigenous wisdom, and that's kind of fits into your process. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you brought it up because I do have that in my vision. It's interesting because I want to tap into that wisdom. Absolutely. And I guess I think that most people are aware of it, but maybe they're not. So they had such different models for the future and how they thought in 7 generations.
Right.
And I feel like we're going to get back to that in the new world we're creating. Excuse me. So there's a whole lot there to really learn. And I don't remember when this happened, but I can remember a time when I think we were raised, and maybe we saw movies or whatever, to think that Native Americans had they weren't as, let's say, developed as we were.
Right.
And now when I look at what
No,
they do and how much more in tune with nature and higher spirits, I think we're the ones that were left behind with our focus on just strong left brain programming. So I
right.
would love to, have that shift in other people's minds to know the wisdom there that we could really learn from that.
Yeah, I think that when you think about the English Empire and the sun never set on the English Empire, that still it. I just am astonished about
Mm,
what kind of humans get off a little island and go conquer the world. I mean, in
yeah,
these ships, I mean that's a little island compared to the land masses of all these continents, and they just got in their ships and took over. I mean,
right.
there's jokes about the India going to India, the English in India. Um,
Mhm.
Eddie Izzard has this great joke thing, but anyway, but I think that colonization may have been, in order the the cultures that were subjugated in
Mhm.
colonization, now there's a chance for them to resurface and guide us in a lot of ways.
Mm.
That's in the wisdom of the elders.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember reading a book years ago called My Year as a Shaman's Apprentice,
Ah,
where this bioethicist went to Brazil because he heard that the medicine men were dying off and the younger people weren't interested in learning from them. And he felt like there was a lot of knowledge there. And it was just fascinating the way that these shamans would heal people. This fellow cut himself, and they were out trekking, I guess, for a few days. The shaman was teaching this fellow how to pick the right plants and things.
yeah.
And he injured himself with a pretty deep cut. And the shaman went and just scraped some bark off of a tree and heated it up and boiled it for an hour. And then there was a paste, and he put it on the wound. And the next day it was totally healed. He couldn't believe it. So think of all this wisdom that we've lost. There may be, uh, this guy was a bioethicist, so he probably was aware that there was a push towards pharmaceutical drugs, and we didn't want those types of healing out. But I think that's all changing. So in 2022, I see us having so much more of that stuff available to us for all kinds of healing, physical, emotional, spiritual. I really feel
Yes,
like that's what
that's
we're moving towards.
yes, and I think that's where the wisdom of the elders can really help. It's not just business wisdom. I mean, there's organizations like SCORE. Are you familiar with
Mhm.
SCORE? That
Yes.
that
Yeah.
retired
Business.
yeah, and Rotary and some of
Mhm.
the business organizations where they do volunteer work worldwide,
Mhm.
that are good. My daughter was in the Peace Corps, so there are things where we're integrating and supporting each other. But what you're offering is for someone who's leaving their corporate job and can finally do what they want to do.
Right.
Finally
Yeah.
share their gift, right?
Right. In fact, it's funny you say that because I know there was like I said, the point where I decided to take the practical route. And I think if I had just been left free, I would have probably been an artist, right? We got told, oh, that's a road to
Starving,
poverty.
starving artist.
Right. Yes. And so I know now there's just going to be a lot of different ways. And that those of us that did the whole corporate uh, life can give back to the corporate world and or share gifts outside of that. There's just so much opportunity now. And it's really like you were saying about the technology. We can teach, we can connect, we can collaborate all through the web. So it really gives us a lot
It's so
of power.
fantastic. And all they have, all people have to have is somebody like you to show them the way, because it's not that scary. I mean, I think once you do your first class, it's like, I did it.
Yeah,
And then it's fun, fun, fun. It's like, what else can I
that's right.
share? Because then you
Right.
see what you're doing is making a difference.
Yes. Yeah. So I do have a program. I'll probably relaunch it in February called Rock Your Wisdom, a three-step process to access, package, and share your wisdom with the world.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
fantastic.
yeah, thank you. That's for someone who perhaps needs help getting their wisdom figured out, packaged, obviously, and then they get the experience of sharing it. And then I have another one called Wisdom to Wealth, where I can help them monetize it. And so I'll probably
Perfect.
launch that later in the year. Or
Perfect. Perfect.
yeah.
So, the Dalai Lama said that the world would be changed by the Western woman. Is that in the back of your mind as you're doing this as well?
Interesting. I think it makes sense. So here's my take on it. What we can do as thought leaders, corporate experts, is I can show up as a credible person. I
Mhm.
can talk about etheric topics and meditation and yoga and ascension and all that because I'm rooted in the technical world and people can't blow me off as some woo-woo flake, right? And that's really where I feel I can leverage it. I know people who have been open to my promotion of softer skills because they're using my technical books. So perhaps that's what that means. I mean, there's all kinds of other ways you could look at the Western woman, but perhaps it's because, in addition to that argument, that we have a bit more of the sacred masculine, where we not only take in, but we can move forward. We take action.
Right.
So perhaps that's a characteristic of the Western woman is that we're also driving forces as well as vessels of receiving. Does that
Well,
make sense?
yes, I do. I agree. And I want to go back to the crone. I hope it's not just gender specific, but I think that there's a sense of community and contribution that you have after you've lived that section of your life. Then
Mm-hmm.
this section of your life is now how do I serve? Because
Yeah.
you could serve to as the point that society or your job would allow you to serve in the old world, but in
Mm-hmm.
this new that you get to co-create with the universe however you want. You're talking about credibility. I think that's at a point it comes from inside. It's
Mm-hmm.
not because that whole credibility, as those people retire that you worked with, unless
Mm-hmm.
the 40-year-olds are picking up your book and still using them, for technology, then that credibility sort of keeps going. And then what do you do for the 40-year-olds? What do you do for the, because the kids coming in, they already knew about community. They already knew, they had a different worldview, and they also did not expect to be with one job their whole life. They expected the excitement and delight of change altogether.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think they get bored without it. I sort of was in that, I'm older, obviously, and I remember being forced to change a lot. And at first it terrified me. And then I started getting bored if it wasn't happening.
Yep,
But I
yep.
think you're right. They come in with it so much more naturally because of perhaps just technology being just quick changing all the time.
Well,
So,
I think that's what this whole thing is about change. I mean, we're in this huge tsunami of change. And
yeah.
I just got to work at a UFO conference in Nevada, and
Mhm.
there's so much evidence that there's other energy sources, and so much other technologies that when are they going to let us have them? Like the
Soon.
well, but
Right.
that's what I'm saying is that change is inevitable, and we are like at the peak of if there's disclosure with even just the UFO disclosure, if nothing else happens, but lots of other things are happening. But if
Yeah.
nothing else happens, that changes the whole financial structure because energy, we wouldn't be on the petrodollar necessarily. And
Mhm.
we've got the opportunity to create from not blank slate, but whole different Tesla energy, all sorts of other ways of creating health and well-being
Yeah.
than the systems we've got now. You're talking about a total financial restructure of what is.
Absolutely. Actually, I don't even think money is going to be that important in the future.
That's
I
good.
don't think we're going to have scarcity. I think everybody is going to be able to live comfortably with actually sharing their gifts. And that wasn't really available under the old system, but I feel like that's going to change. And I agree with you about the energy. I think we're going to be on free energy relatively soon, and people are going to be able to flourish with whatever inspires them. So that's the world I'm visualizing.
Me too. Me too. And the thing is that if people connect with you now, they can start working on what that is, so they're prepared to
Mhm.
be the leaders and the way showers, which is what I've been doing all these years. Is I'm so interested in having all these amazing people available for when people do see their opportunities for contribution to society, and that they
Mhm.
feel they're allowed to, that once that happens, that there'll be all sorts of teachers and guides
Mhm.
available, which is what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think there'll be funding available if people want to start their own business, their own channel. There'll be resources to support that. I think
Right,
that's going to be a big change.
right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So one other question about love, make it your business.
Yeah.
When I remember when you first wrote that book, and then you wrote a workbook with it. Um, um, do you feel that people are already starting to expand the way that they're working in team by showing love? Do you feel that that's happening, or is it still the structures are still difficult
Yeah, it really depends on the industry. So my book, Love at Work, that came out in 2014, really made a fiscal argument, proved that companies, so I define love as caring and compassion,
Mhm.
and companies that modeled that through research, they actually did so much better, even compared to the good to great companies.
Wow.
Their performance was, say, in 5 years, 3 times better.
Wow.
Excuse me. So what I feel is there's a pull in a couple directions, right? There's this need to compete. And so companies are realizing it and they're starting to do teams that weren't before. So maybe some of the older insurance companies and some of the financial institutions, energy companies, retail, they're all getting up, becoming aware of it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the young people that they're trying to hire are demanding this. They want this culture, this sort of family feeling that they're cared for,
Mm-hmm.
and that lowers attrition because they stay longer. So
Right.
it's really a win-win, really.
Wow. Well, yeah. So it's fascinating to talk about this from the people seeing that they're just a cog in the wheel to
Mhm.
pulling themselves out of that puzzle as a puzzle piece, pulling themselves out and creating their whole wheelhouse
Mhm.
for others. That's what I love, the model that you're providing and the actions that you're step by step allowing people to see, because the first part of it is seeing that that's even possible, because that hasn't been a what you're doing and what you're offering is a new paradigm, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's, especially with the corporate emphasis,
Mm-hmm.
is that that we can make beautiful techniques, practices, models that maybe one person has developed and tried to get used, and we can get that out and I can get it in front of 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, for example,
Yeah.
which I have like 12,000, I think.
Yeah.
So I want to be that voice that I can get people's talents and wisdom in front of corporate leaders. And I can make the argument that this is good for business. I
Right.
know there's a lot of people that are conscious business champions, and that's great. You know, to me, that's preaching to the choir. I want to get to that maybe hard-nosed, controlled CEO and get in there and say, if you were more caring and compassionate, you would make more money, and just inspire them. And that has worked. It's shifting because a lot of them are frustrated that their competitors are doing better, especially in insurance. That's been a real transition. Is these big, old, established insurance companies are losing out to these young whippersnappers that are using the internet, and a lot of the leadership teams struggle to adjust, but they're doing it because otherwise they're going to be gone. So I think their stockholders are demanding it.
Well, I think, Tony Robbins says there's two emotions, one's love and one's fear. And the
Mm,
old model rained on fear,
yeah.
and the new model reigns on love. But but
Mhm.
they but there's that can't be the only thing. It has to rain on love, cooperation, people shining their own gifts and
Mhm.
sharing their gifts at a high. So I see this kind of as the games, and I don't know if you see it that way too, but the fun when you're building in a team and everybody's getting they're getting attention, positive attention, they're getting the funds they need to do their part. They get acknowledgement of, like, what we would do is we would have a meeting on a Monday, and I'll share team meeting, and then we'd have a meeting on Friday. And I
Mhm.
did that in my business a lot as well too, where you had these two, the Monday meeting was, hey, this is what the week looks like, and Friday meeting was, hey, this is how much we got done. And everybody, the key team, I worked with a training company in Longmont, and we went from 800,000 to 5 million in a year, having meetings like that, where everybody, there were
Mhm.
8 of us, and we were sitting at a table, and you didn't show up to that meeting and just throw out a bunch of hot air, because you knew on Friday you had to be accountable to what you said on Monday. right? And
Yeah,
there's all
accountability is so important.
yeah, but there's so many things like that that it makes it a game. Like the momentum is exciting and fulfilling, and
Mhm.
it's almost like it's a virus.
Yeah.
Good one.
There's good viruses, yes. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else would you like to share about your you I know that you gave us some gifts. I'm going to show it here on the screen. Um, Heaven 2002 CBZ.
Yes, and I wanna apologize for my throat. I didn't clear it well enough this morning, so I've been
Oh, are you
having a
okay?
little coughing, I'm sorry. So, yeah, I'm doing if you see this in time, I'm doing a little workshop, a free workshop on Sunday, January 2nd, called Co-Create Heaven on Earth in 2022, and I'd love you to show up. The URL, which is on the screen, is Heaven 2022 CBZ, stands for Conscious Business Zone.com. So heaven2022cbz.com. And then if you're not available or you're seeing this later, I have a free gift for you. Just go to oliviasentme.com and you can pick up your own Wisdom Bearers Blueprint. And this is a really cool map to just show you all the steps to discovering your own wisdom, thinking about ways to package it, and then lots of ideas for sharing it so that you can kind of think about if you want to do that and what it might entail and some ways that we can help you. But that's also free. So just go pick that up, your Wisdom Bears Blueprint. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I want to, Robin Nicole has written a whole bunch of things I just found on here. Just as soon
Oh,
as
hey,
you think you
Robin.
have it all figured out, something changes. Adaptability is the key. Over here, I'm beginning to notice small changes like no more plastic silverware at takeout away restaurants, no more fireplaces allowed in new houses. Cars are beginning to be no longer using combustion engines. In Ireland, no more combustion engines will be allowed to be sold as new vehicles by 2030. So things are changing
Mhm.
at every level all over the world. And she's saying it's excited. And she's really excited about the change. And I think that's what we're hoping that um, uh, you can tap into what Olivia is doing because she has figured out a way to not only have um, you identify your wisdom and figure out a way to share it, but a target market that will buy it.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
That
And
is
I love what you said, Robin Nicole, about adaptability, because that is, to me, one of the core competencies, adaptability and resilience. So we have to be able to move, sense, and respond rather than command and control. So thank you.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and seeing this world and this experience as a gift, as what's the gift in it, rather than the victimization model, because that model doesn't have to be part of your life anymore. You get to choose. You get to
Well,
choose how you see everything, right?
right. And it also is one of my internal motivators. Well, maybe it's external, so I'm not sure, but I and one day I realized that all the things I'd been through in my life got me where I am. And I've had a lot of trauma and a lot of loss. And I thought, okay, now I know why I'm here, how I'm supposed to do it. And what motivates me is that if I go to my grave and I don't fulfill my dharma or my purpose, will I have to come back in a new life and go through all those things again? And so I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. And it helps me move through fear because I really was terrified at first to even just do this, just to be on camera.
I
And it's
understand.
and it's still a little nerve-wracking, and I think that's why my throat tightens up. So that's something
Oh,
I'm working on is my throat chakra to be able to have a voice. It's so important, and especially for I'm going to say the feminine because I think men and women we have our divine feminine. It might be more easily accessed by women just by the way our brains are made, but I think it's the rise of the feminine among all of us that's being called forth, which is the more community based, everybody's valued. And it really, I just think we're going to have so much more joy
Right.
in 2022 and beyond. So I'm excited.
Well, the gift of all of this is the journey to find your joy. Suffering is optional. I mean, the
Yeah.
Buddhists have always said that is, suffering is optional. And this is an opportunity to see how you get to get your spark back. And
Mm.
the joy of sharing is one of the ways you get to keep your spark.
Yes. Yeah. You think about how depression is so pervasive. And I think it's from that where people just feel squashed and they've even lost touch with their own spark, their own joy,
Right.
and then expressing it, people can just come alive and be of service, be value to others, which is, I think, gives most people joy, if not everyone.
Yeah, of course. And well, thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm going to show your website again. And if you could share again about your two sites that you're sharing here so people make sure that people get the information, please.
Absolutely. So this Sunday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern time, I'm offering a 2 to 2.5 hour free workshop to just really set in motion 2022 as we show up fully. And so it's called Co-Create Heaven on Earth in 2022. And you can go to Heaven 2022 CBZ for Conscious Business Zone.com to register. And if you don't have time or you're seeing this after January 2nd, you can get a free gift at oliviasentme.com. And that gift is a Wisdom Bears blueprint. It's a map for you to follow for how to access, package, and share your wisdom with the world.
It's so perfect. That's so perfect. Well, thank you so much, Olivia. I love everything you do. I really admire you, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and your perspective, because I think we have a tremendous opportunity coming up. People will start to realize how powerful they really are.
Mm-hmm.
They're really here to make the world a better place, and you're giving everyone the chance to
Oh, thank
experience
you.
it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Kathy.
Thank you. Talk to
Bye,
you
everybody.
later. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.